Good day, YouTube. I want to do a quick video. I'm working on the gas tank. I've gotten myself a new exciting project, and so it is the Targa Turbo version of the 1988 Supra. And one of the first things that I ran into was there was no fuel pressure. Ended up putting a fuel pressure regulator on it with a gauge, determined that there was no pressure, like actually not on the line. So I dropped the tank and I'm replacing the fuel pump with the Walbro 255. This is basically step one of trying to get more pressure or more fuel to the engine so it runs, you can get more horsepower out of it. And when you install that, there have been a couple of videos. I'm in the trunk. Let's give you a quick visual here. So in the back of the vehicle, just to the right of the spare tire is where you have this is sitting in this position. Remove the screws. There are two plugs, this one and another one, which I've removed. You unplug those and you go to the space where you can see there's no fuel tank here, but there's 4 screws, and this little piece right here comes out. This is the retainer for the fuel tank from this side. So you pull those 4 screws out, this comes out, releases that, and then you've got 3 lines. I'm going to get you a flashlight. Sorry about all the movement. I'm doing this a little bit on the fly. I just want to get this video done before I get it put back together. These videos have been a little bit screwy. And so right there is your fuel filter. And the fuel filter unscrews there. There's 2 screws. You can see, oh shoot, how do I do this? I can see why they have such a hard time getting this done with one hand. Those 2 screws come out. That's the mount for the fuel filter. This line gets unscrewed. It's a 14 on the left. I used line wrenches. It looks like somebody had done it before me and used regular wrenches, but if you can get like brake line wrenches, that's fantastic. This connects up to the fuel tank. I'll show you that connection. And then this is the return. And then that is the vent. So if you're going to remove the canister from the from under the there's a charcoal canister under the hood, if you're going to remove that, then this hose you need to not connect, and then you need to run that vent somewhere else, someplace friendly, not over towards the exhaust, but somewhere that it'll vent out back here away from hot things. So the first thing you do to remove the gas tank from down here, you've got a 19 inch right here, and then on the other side is a 14. These are grab and squeeze hoses, and so you remove those 2, and then there's a strap on the left and then a strap on the right. These are 17s. Hit those with a little bit of PB. If your car is a little bit old, you don't want to rip any of this stuff up. It is replaceable, but there's no reason to mess with that if you don't have to. A little bit of high impact, zip that off, zip that off. Drop the left hand side that is on the inside of this shield first so it doesn't get hung up on this lip on the inside, and then drop the side with the neck on it. All right, now you gotta suffer through me getting up here. Okay. So the fuel tank is out, and then you want to basically remove the fuel pump. The fuel pump is inside the tank, and basically you see where all my new wires are coming out of. This is the where the measure, it has the float and all the things that measure. This is your vent line. And let me talk about the vent line real quick. I know I'm hopping around, sorry about that. But this vent line, this is pretty important. This runs up to the front and it comes out right here. I've seen a couple of feeds on Facebook where people are saying, hey, what is this hose for? Well, that is the vent for the fuel tank. And if it builds up enough pressure to be able to shoot fuel up here, and you have removed the canister, which I have done, canister connects right here. I simply RTV'd that, connects here, and then I'm showing you how to treat this. But if you don't treat this properly, then you're gonna have fuel dripping right on the turbo. And so you're gonna have a flamethrower. So really important that you treat this vent line. I'm gonna get new long, sorry the light's kind of bad, new long hose, and I'm gonna feed this somewhere where if it does build up pressure, then it can just blow it off. All right, removal of the fuel pump. Fuel pump's on the inside, and then these guys, spray those with PB. A little bit of PB blaster, a little antifreeze, whatever you use to get things unseized, and work them both forward and backward. It's really not fun to have them snap. It looks like somebody has done this before because this one was snapped when I got here. Not a big deal because, as you can see, I've RTV'd it back in here pretty heavily. But this comes out as an assembly. Once you remove these, you got to kind of twist it and work it out, kick it to the side. Be gentle with it. There's no reason to tear it up. And then inside there, there's basically a, it's kind of like it's an assembly. It looks like a little elevator or something like that. But this is the actual pump. And the fuel pump, this is a Walbro 255, what I put in there, got a couple of them. And so you got to put it together. And I mean, all that's pretty simple. That's the insulator. This is where the pickup tube and the actual fuel filter go. So you've got two connections, and I've marked them because my wires, the actual covering insulation came off. But you got a positive and a negative. Positive and a negative. You've got a fuel line, and this fuel line, the one that I got, was a little bit too long, and so when I tried to put it back in there, this part was hitting the bottom of the tank, and it wasn't allowing this to sit flat. So you may have to cut this hose a little bit, just make sure that that fits up. Now, I do heat shrink and soldering on all my connections, and then I just went ahead and removed the connections that were on the inside of the tank. Looked pretty rough, and so literally what I did was I ran a wire to that side and a wire to that side. Of course, I'm going to want to know which one of those is positive when I get out, so I have marked this. I also tested it before I put it in there just to make sure that I was getting power, that it was going to work properly. I ultimately would like to never see this thing again. And so I think that pretty much covers this part. So you undo the screws, pull that out, remove the old one. Generally, you want to have some sort of a sock, and by that I don't mean something that you would wear, something more like this that will insulate this, because you don't want current that's not supposed to be there getting to this item. The one that is in here has got a rubber boot that comes up to here, and then it has like a rubber sock that goes over the top of it. Same thing I'll do with this one when I install it. So once you get it mounted in there, I put RTV on the bottom of the rubber gasket. I put the gasket down, and then I put RTV on the top of the gasket. And then you really want to make sure that you get a good seal on this, because that means that your pressure is going to be questionable if you don't. I RTV'd the bottom of this, and then I RTV'd the top of it, just to make sure that I got a good seal on this. I have a stranded, this is 12 gauge wire that is a little bit too much. It's kind of an over-engineered version, but this is going to come out, and then I'm going to put a 2-prong connector on this side, and then I'm going to connect power here and ground on that side. Now, I don't want to jump back and forth from the front or the back of the car. I got one more thing on the front that I want to show you. So just remember, on the fuel pump, it's a real simple item. Like literally, if I took this and connected it up to the battery, this thing would start running. Power on this side, ground on this side. I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just saying that would be a way that you could check it. Now, when you get to the relay, you don't want to just connect the fuel pump to the battery. You want to be able to trigger it and control it and do things that, where it's pumping in the appropriate time. Now, the relay is because the Supra, 1988 Supra, this is a relay and a resistor. I took the relay off. It sits right here. It's on the passenger side fender, just inside the engine bay here. And so what happens is the Supra is set up to, at low RPMs, run 9 volts. And then once you get over a certain number, I believe it's 3,000, it goes up to 12 volts. So it kind of switches and has a little bit of logic worked into it. You don't want that anymore. Basically what you want is 12 volts going to the back. So what I've done here is I've created a very small, very simple short or a jumper. And this jumper connects from the bottom left to the top right. What that does is that means that the wire that used to go to the positive side of the fuel pump is now going to be my trigger wire. And the trigger wire needs to have 12 volts on it. So the 12 volts is going to activate the system back there. So this is how you do that. I've just disconnected the resistor. Maybe a little bit of this is in error. Somebody post or let me know if it is. But this is working so far. All right, so now we're going to transition over to the relay. How do you wire the relay? This is the positive side that goes to the fuel pump. This is the negative. Oops, I can't point and film at the same time. This is the negative side. Get both of them in here. That goes to the fuel pump. There's just 2 wires, and those 2 wires are, I'll just take this with me, represented by this guy right here. And so I'm going to take the fuel tank, and I'm going to put it back in the car. I'm going to basically lift up the side with the side with the filling tube on it is going to go up first, and then I'm going to get the heat shield that you saw on the left hand side. I'm going to get that clear, and then I'll put it up, and then I'll take those 2 nuts that go on the straps, and then I'll get that back up in there. And so once that comes up in there, I'm going to have 2 wires from the fuel tank, from the fuel pump, sitting right here. And so I'm just going to have this fuel pump sitting here. Now, what you need on the fuel pump is you need a positive 12 volts on the positive side, and then you need ground on the other side. And so here, this is literally, I cut the two-prong plug off of it. I'm getting ready to get a new two-prong plug. I'm going to strip these, and I'm going to connect the fuel pump side over here, and then this is going to be the power side. But one of these is ground, and when I ground it on, try to get you a real picture here, is just sitting right there. So it's a body ground, and that goes to the negative side, to the ground side of the fuel pump. And then the positive side is going to go to the relay. And the relay has got 4 pins on it. And in essence, what you want to do is you want to have power supplied, and you want to put a fuse on it. Normally your fuse is going to go close to your battery. I did this for convenience because it's kind of screwed up there. But I have a hefty gauge wire that is coming back, and I intentionally used a smaller gauge on the fuse because if anything gives up, I want this to give up. I don't want to get too much electricity in the fuel tank and start burning things up. So if things go crazy, I've got a 20 amp fuse in here. So the fuse will fail first. The wires on the fuse will fail second, and then probably that connector. And then that's about as far as it's going to go if you have any issues. So the power, basically on the relay, you've got I don't know if you can see these numbers here. I need to find my flashlight now. Shoot. All right, so pin 30 is right here. And so the 30 is on the bottom, and then pin 87 is on the top. And ultimately what you're trying to do, this is where the power goes on 87. And I don't think it really matters if you connect power on 87 or 30. Somebody can happily correct me on that. But basically these two activate the relay, and then this is the circuit that you want to create between 30 and 87. And so in essence, I've got the positive side of the fuel pump connected on this side. I've got the battery source here, and I still need to heat shrink this, but I'm going to take the battery source and I'm going to connect it up just like this. And so that is the circuit that you're trying to create. And so these other two are this is the trigger wire that was originally connected to the fuel pump, and then this is the negative, or the ground, that was originally connected to the fuel pump. I cut that off. This one doesn't really matter because I've got a new ground for my fuel pump, and then this becomes my trigger wire. And the trigger wire, as soon as we get 12 volts here, and then this is ground, this is going to complete the circuit, and you're going to be able to get flow, electronic flow, from the battery to the fuel pump. So hopefully that was a little bit more direct, and I'm just trying to show you all the pieces in one time. I don't know if you can see it, so let me just say it real quick. I've got the positive side of the fuel pump on 30. The battery is on 87, or the 12 volt source. 86 is the trigger, 85 is ground. And so that looks just like this back where we started. Hopefully that's pretty helpful for you. Sorry for the crappy jumping around. Just was really not getting what I needed out of the ones that were available. And that, my friend, is how you wire a relay.